Assalamu alaikum friends, my name is Bilal Khan and today is my 47th video of DevOps. So in this video I am going to talk about CI/CD pipeline. Alright, so the CI/CD pipeline or the continuous integration and continuous deployment is a series of steps that must be performed in order to deliver a new version of software. Alright, so basically it is a feedback system in which you will provide some kind of some version of software and it will be given to the CI/CD pipeline, and the CI/CD pipeline will give a feedback to you before deploying it, and then you can find some errors and then deploy it again. So it's a loop in which you will deliver the software, new version of software every time, alright, so that it is deployed without any error. Alright, so CI/CD is a methodology, it's not a tool. Alright, so basically there are many tools that will be present inside this CI/CD pipeline methodology, but CI/CD pipeline itself is not a tool. Alright, so the code won't be deployed all at once because it will create a problem for a developer to review it again, alright, after some days or some months. Instead, the code will be divided in different parts, and those parts will be deployed continuously by giving us a feedback that whether it is succeeded or failed. Alright, basically what does it mean? So there is no need to write hundreds of or thousands of lines of code and then deploy it, because the chances are maybe the developer has made some mistake in these codes. So what the CI/CD pipeline will do, basically it will allow you to write some lines of code, and then it will be pushed to the CI/CD pipeline, and then the CI/CD pipeline will give us a feedback so that if errors are found, then it will be removed, then the developer will remove those errors and then it will be deployed again. So in this way the process will be automated and it will give us a feedback every time. Alright, so there will be a loop in which the CI/CD pipeline will give us a feedback every time we made an error. Alright, so if we made an error, it will give us a notification so that we can remove that error and then we can deploy it again. So in this way there is no need to write hundreds or thousands of lines of code at once and find the errors in one minor issue or two minor issues in hundreds of lines of code, so because it will be very difficult for a developer to find it. Alright, so that's the process of CI/CD pipeline, that in which you will continuously integrate and continuously deploy the software and deliver it. Alright, so the process is automated, so that if the bugs are found in between, it will automatically be detected and we can solve it from there. Alright, so because we will receive the feedback and the notification that in that file, in that line, the following error has been occurred, so that we can remove that error and then deploy it again. Alright, so now let's take a look at the before the continuous integration. What was the process? Alright, this was the process before continuous integration. Alright, so first of all the developer has to write hundreds or thousands of lines of code, and then that code will be given to the repository. Alright, so that may be a GitLab repository or a GitHub repository, and then the code will be transferred to the building stage or the integration stage. Alright, so the building stage will basically build all the components of the code into one place. Alright, and after that from the building stage, the code will be given to the testing stage, and the testing stage will test all the code that you have written, that this developer has written, and that after testing it, if it has found some errors, then the errors will be given to the developer again. Alright, so in this way the developer has to find in hundreds of thousands or thousands of lines of code one minor error or two minor errors in these code. So it will be very difficult for the developer to shift their focus again and find one minor error in these hundreds of lines of code. So before continuous integration, the process was very tense. Alright, the developer pushed the file containing thousands of lines of codes to GitHub. Alright, after that the next step is to build the code at one place. Alright, so it will build the code at one place. After that, the third step was to test the code from start to the end to find the errors. and once the errors are found, then it will be given to the developer again. But the problem was there that the process has a problem that if a file has some minor issues, then it will go back to the developers again. Alright. So in this way, the developer will have to shift their focus from another project to this problem again, because the developer is now focused on another project, and now the developer has to shift his focus to this project again to find this minor issue. So in this way, it will be very difficult for him. So they will have to find a minor bug inside a huge file. Alright. So what is the process that is happening after the continuous integration? So now the developer has to write the code, and then it will be uploaded into the repository. After that, what it needs to do, that it will give the code to the CI server or the continuous integration server to build, test and deploy it. Once it is deployed or built or tested, it will give the feedback to the developer again, that whether it is failed or succeeded. And I will go through the steps that what are the steps through which the CI server will perform these functionalities, whether it will build it, test it and deploy it. And on every stage, the feedback will be given to the developer so that he can solve the bug in that stage also. So he don't need to go to the deployment and then solve it. So first of all, the developer push the file containing few lines of code to the GitHub. Alright, and after that, the whole application won't be given to the repository. Alright, so you need to keep this in mind that the CI/CD or the continuous integration in this process, you don't have to write all the code in all at once. Instead, you just need to write few lines of code and it will be given to the CI server to test it. And the whole application won't be given to the repository and the CI server. Instead, the code that is written in 1 or 2 days will be given to the CI server to check it. And then another day, some more lines of code will be pushed to check it again, and this process will go on. Alright? And after that, in this way, the continuous integration will be equal to continuous building and continuous testing. So you are continuously building and testing it, and you don't need to write the whole code again and all at once and give it to the deployment or building or testing stage. All right. So now let's take a look at the process through which the CI/CD pipeline will work. So basically, and these are the steps through which the code will go, and at the end it will be validated and measured. So the first step is the developer. So that means the developer will develop a software, alright, and then it will go to the version control system. Alright, so the version control system will get it, and now if any error found in this version control system, it will be given back to the developer. As you can see that now this from the version control system, it will go back to the developer. It has not passed through all the stages. Instead, at the first stage, the developer has get a feedback that the version control system has found some error, so you need to fix this. So the developer will fix this issue, and after that the process will go on, and the code will go from the version control system, and after that it will give to the building stage. And once the building stage has approved, it will go to the unit testing. But if the building stage has not approved yet, and it has found some error, then it will go to the developer again. So that you need to build it first, and then it will go to the unit testing. So in this way, the process will go on, and on every stage, the feedback will be given to the developer. Or the process will not go further unless the problem is resolved at that time. All right. So the developer will send the code to the version control, and then it will go through all the stages one by one. Alright, and all the stages will give the feedback to the developer so that the problem is resolved only at that point. It should not go to the last stage and then give us a feedback. Alright. On each stage, the code will be tested and it will give the feedback. Alright, so you don't need to go at the end and receive a feedback. Instead, on every stage the code will be tested and it will give us a feedback that on that stage some error has been found and you need to fix this. And after that, if some bug found in any stage, then the code will stop there and the feedback will be given to the developer to make it correct. Alright, so in this way it will be easy to check the code before deployment. On every stage you don't need to wait for it to reach at that stage. Instead, on every stage you can correct the error and then move to the next stage. Alright, so in this way the production feedback and the testing will be at every stage. So this is how the CI/CD pipeline will work. So now let's take a look at the Jenkins. But before discussing about the Jenkins, let me tell you about the DevOps process. So basically the DevOps has a different phases like the following. So first you have to plan, and then you have to code, and after that you have to build and then test it and then deploy it and operate it, and then at the end you will have to monitor it. So basically these are the steps through which the process will go on in the DevOps phase. Alright, in the DevOps process. So the thing that in which the Jenkins is used is basically the integration tool. It is the Jenkins is an integration tool. This integration tool will be used in all the processes. Basically, if you want to go from the code to the build, then Jenkins will help you to go from the code to the build. Alright, so the code will not transfer to the build or the test directly. Instead, the code will first of all go to the Jenkins, and then from the Jenkins it will go to the build. Alright, and after that, once the code is built, after that the code after the code is built, it will go back to the Jenkins, and the Jenkins will take it and give it to the test. Alright, once the code is tested, it will go back to the Jenkins, and the Jenkins will give it to the deployment and operation. Alright, once the operation has done, the code will go back to the Jenkins or the integration tool, and it will be given to the monitoring. Alright, so in this way the Jenkins is in between that will transfer the data from code to deployment to testing and to operation, monitor, etc. Alright, so this is the functionality of the integration tool or the Jenkins. So let's talk about the Jenkins and its description here. So you will first plan and write the code and then push it to GitHub. So for planning and coding, you can use the tool like GitHub or GitLab. After that, build the code with many tools like Maven or Grady. Alright, so for building, the tool that will be used is called the Maven or Grady, etc. And after that, for testing, use the Selenium. Alright, so this is the tool for the Selenium and the Unit tool are the tools that will be used for testing. And for deployment and operation, use the Chef, Puppet, Ansible that you have discussed in the previous video. We have discussed is the Ansible. You can check out my previous video also. And for monitoring, we will use the Nagios tool. So Nagios tool will monitor it. So these are the tools that are specific to each of the phases. But now let's take a look at the Jenkins. So the Jenkins will monitor this process of transitioning from one phase to another. Alright, so it will automate the process of transitioning from one phase to another. It means that after completing the work on the first phase, you don't need to go to the next phase and so on. Instead, the Jenkins will automatically go to each of the phase one by one. Alright, so once the code is built, it will go to the testing phase with the help of Jenkins. Once the code is tested, it will go to the Jenkins, and the Jenkins will take this code to the deployment and operation. And once the code is operated and deployed, it will go to the monitoring with the help of Jenkins. So the Jenkins will take this code. But before this, you will have to give this deployed or builded or tested code to the Jenkins. Alright. So after that, what you need to do is it will automate the process, and you don't need to go to each of the phase. Instead, the Jenkins will go to each of the phase one by one. So now let's talk about the Jenkins and what is Jenkins. So Jenkins is an open source tool written in Java, alright, that runs on Windows, Mac OS and Linux. So it is free community tool for CI or the continuous integration. Alright, so Jenkins automates the entire process of software development as I have shown you above. Alright, so as you can see that it will automate all the process of the software development inside the DevOps. After that, Jenkins was originally developed by Sun Microsystem in 2004 under the name Hudson. Alright, so this was the name that was of the Jenkins when it was developed in 2004, and the project was later named Jenkins when Oracle bought Microsystem. Alright, so it was later named as Jenkins. So the Jenkins was kept for free, but the paid version of the Jenkins was released, and that is now called Hudson. Alright, so the previous name was Hudson, but now the paid version of the Jenkins is called Hudson, and the free version is called the Jenkins. Alright, so it can run on any major platform without any compatibility issues. And there are other alternatives of Jenkins like Bamboo, Travis CI, BuildBot, etc. Alright, but they are the paid version. If you want to go for the free one, you can use the Jenkins tool. But these tools are paid. Alright. So whenever developers write code, we integrate all code of the developers at that point of time, and we build it, test it, and deliver it to the client. So this process is called CI/CD. So the whole process of the CI/CD is basically to integrate, to test it, to build it, and deliver it, and then monitor it. So this whole process will be called the CI/CD pipeline. So I'm going to show you the CD, because we have not discussed the CD part in the detail. We have only discussed the CI part. So I will show you what is the CD part. So because of CI, now the bugs will be reported fast, so that the entire software development process works fast. Alright, so in this way, because the bugs will be reported every time, and the feedback will be given to the developer every time, so in this way the entire software development process will be working fast. So now let's talk about the workflow of Jenkins. Alright, so basically this is the workflow in which the developer will write a code and then deploy it to the GitHub. And after that, the GitHub will basically give the code. The GitHub will not give the code. Instead, the Jenkins will pulls the code from the GitHub. Alright, so it will take the code from the GitHub, and that code will be present inside this Jenkins. Alright, after that, the Jenkins will give this code to the build or the Maven. Alright, and after that, once this code is builded, now the Maven will give this code back to the Jenkins. Alright, and after that, the Jenkins will give the code to the testing team, testing stage, or the Selenium tool. Alright, so now this code will be given to the Selenium for testing purpose. Once the code is tested, it will be given back to the Jenkins. Alright, as you can see that it will go back to the Jenkins. Once it is received in Jenkins, the Jenkins will give this code to the QA or check style to test it. Alright, and now if this phase has checked it and tested, then the QA will give this code back to the Jenkins, and now this will be the Jenkins will give this code to the deploy and delivery phase. Alright, so basically the above stage, as you can see, is called the CI, and the lower stage is called the CD. Alright, so this lower stage is called the CD. So the code from the Jenkins will be given to the deployment and test delivery. Alright, so let's take a look at this description. So plugins are available for Jenkins that will help it to communicate with other tools. So on every tool, so let's say for GitHub, for Maven, for Selenium, for other tools that will be used, the Jenkins has the specific plugin for it that will build the communication between these tools. Alright, so the Jenkins has a tool for Maven, the Jenkins has a tool for GitHub that will build the communication between these tools. Alright, so for every tool that there is some kind of plugin that is already created and is present. Alright, so developer will write a code, it will be given to the GitHub. Alright, so the developer will write a code, it will be given to the GitHub or GitLab, and then the Jenkins will put the code from the GitHub, pull the code and give it to the Maven. Alright, and for the building purpose. And after that, Jenkins will pull the code from the Maven and give it to the testing, means for the to the Selenium. And after that, Jenkins will pull the code from the Selenium and give it to the Artifactory, means for archiving purpose. It will store the final code that is able to be used. Alright, so basically it will also give the code to the Artifactory, and then it will also give the code to the QA or check style. Alright, so the artifactory is basically store the code that is able to be used further. Although we can store the code in the GitHub also, but the GitHub is a raw code. The GitHub contains the raw code. For the final purpose that you want to use the code, the artifactory code will be used there. All right. So the Jenkins will give pull the code from the Selenium and give it to the artifactory, and after that it will give it to the QA or the check style for testing it. And after that, the Jenkins will pull the code from the check style and deploy it and deliver it. Alright, so as you can see, after the Jenkins has received the code from the QA, it will be given to the deployment and the delivering. So let me check this. Alright, so Jenkins will pull the code from the check style and deploy it and deliver it. So after delivery, our work is finished. But let's say if the end user or the customer does not know how to deploy it. Alright, so let's say if the customer don't know how to deploy it and deliver it, then what we need to do? Then our technical team will go for the support to deploy and deliver it. Alright, so this will be the work of the technical team if the end user don't know how to deploy it and deliver it. So now let's take a look at the building stage. So we have already discussed that it will build the code. It will build the code with the help of Maven. But what is the meaning of building the code? So basically, build will first compile the code. All right, this is the first stage, and then it will review it, and then it's to perform the unit testing on it, and after that the integration testing on it, and after that it will package it using the var or jar, etc. Alright, so this is the simple definition of the building stage. Alright, so now let's take a look at the advantages of Jenkins. So the advantages of Jenkins, as it has lots of plugins available that will help Jenkins to connect with other tools like GitHub, Maven, etc. So for each tool there are some kind of plugins that are already available. So you can write your own plugin also if you want to. Alright, so this is also the good point that you can write your own plugin because Jenkins is an open source, so you can write it. And after that, you can use community plugin that are already present. Alright, and after that, Jenkins is not a tool; it's a framework. So you can do whatever you want. All you need are the plugins. Or so there are multiple plugins that you can use inside this framework, and they will be connected to different tools. Alright, so all the things are automated, but if you want to manually do some things like building or testing, then you can do it manually. So let's say there are some staging of it. Let's say these are the stages, like the code will go to the GitHub, and then it will build and test it. Alright, so all the process is automated, and the code will be given to the Jenkins. From Jenkins it will go back to the testing, and from testing it will go back to the Jenkins, and from Jenkins it will go back to the QA testing. So this process is automated. But let's say if you want to manually do this process, let's say if you want to manually do the building process or the testing process, then you can also do this because it will give you the control. But if you want the control on any of the stage, you can do this in the Jenkins also. Alright, so Jenkins has a master and slaves architecture. Alright, so inside Jenkins there is one master and multiple slaves that you can connect with who will perform the jobs. Alright, so inside this Jenkins there are one master and multiple slaves, and those slaves can be identified that and they will do the certain jobs, and so that the burden will be distributed inside this Jenkins. Alright, so one slave will transfer the data to the build, and another slave will do the transfer the data to the testing. So in this way the load will be distributed. Alright, so after that we can attach multiple slaves to one master node. Alright, so basically multiple slaves will be connected to this one master that will do the work for us. So master instructs the slave. If the slaves are not available, Jenkins will itself do the job. Alright, so if the slaves are not present, then the Jenkins will itself do a job. So it can schedule the tasks that after some time that task will be started. So it can also schedule the task that after certain time that task should be started and you will perform that task. So it will instruct the slave. So the Jenkins will instruct the slave. After that, it can create the labels for the slave so that the task will be done by slave 1 or slave 2. Alright, as you can see that there will be multiple slaves, and the Jenkins will basically give the labels to these slaves, that the first slave will have transfer the data to the build, the second slave will transfer the data to the testing, and the third slave will transfer the data to the QA testing. So basically the Jenkins will give the labels to multiple slaves that you need to perform these kind of jobs. So I hope you understood. This is the theoretical part of Jenkins, and we will be working in the practical part also. So I hope you like it. So if you liked it, then make sure to subscribe to my channel, and if you have any questions, then ask those questions in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer all of them. So till then, goodbye.